Hello friends, and welcome to the Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, if you are a returning visitor, you already know that this is still the beginning part of my deep dive year into the Thoth system, the system that was developed by Lady Frida Harris and Aleister Crowley. It's really been an interesting journey so far, and I anticipate learning a lot in the coming months. And I hope that you're enjoying watching this as well. Before we get into this week's spread, I'd like to say a couple of thank yous and do a little bit of reflection. Thank yous first. Thank you for hitting all of you who hit that thumbs up button and who have subscribed, because that really does help the channel. Those little actions that are easy for us to do really do help the channel and help get the channel out in front of the eyes of people who might enjoy watching the content as well. So I'm deeply grateful for you who do that, and thank you. I'm also grateful for those of you who reach out and ask for readings. If you do want a private reading from me, my email address is below, thehangedmaninthemoon@gmail.com. Send me an email, we'll get you a reading. Some of my friends already know that I've got a brand new reading table all set up for doing just that, so there it is. And thank you for those who've reached out. Because I enjoy it. Part of me thinks of it as performing a service. And I hope that those of you who have gotten readings from me have felt the same, that you've received some kind of a service, because I'm here to help. That's what I want to do. So, thank you. For reflection. For the last few weeks, we've been having a little bit of shadow flowing through the spreads if you've been following along, yeah? And this week's spread seems to be moving in the direction of the light, perhaps. The elements seem to be more in their places, if that makes sense. Now, do you know that I have been reading with elemental dignities when I read the Thoth Tarot? Especially with the last two spreads I've been using with the Thoth system, I've been reading with elemental dignities. Now, if you don't know what that means, let me briefly explain. That means that every element in the minor arcana, and I draw in the elements from the major arcana as well, but every element in the minor arcana, yeah? Cups are water, wands are fire, swords are air, and discs are earth, right? So each one of those four elements has one element that will lift it up, that will intensify it. It will have one element that will drag it down, and one element that it is compatible with. It's neutral. So, for example, a fire element, with a fire, they're match, right? They're same, all is well. Fire with air, they lift each other up, they intensify each other. Fire with earth, neutral, not much change, not much intensity, not much dragging it, they walk comfortably together. Fire and water are opposites, they are considered elementally ill-dignified, and there is tension and disharmony between them. So then for water, fire would be the ill-dignified element, and air would be the compatible partner, and earth would be the one that helps build it up. They mutually intensify each other. Does that make sense? So I read with dignities, and when looking at this week's spread, it looks like most of the cards seem to be in fairly good position for their elements. Good stuff, right? But the first card that I laid out for this week's spread gave me a little bit of concern. The first card right out of the deck made me think, uh-oh, we're in for it again, but it turns out not so much. This week's spread really looks to be on the relatively positive side. So, friends, We're going to dive into this week's reading. First, I will show you the spread, and we'll talk about the spread in general, and then we'll break it down into its bits and read them in its bits. And so, friends, here we go. Here's the entire spread for this week. What do you think of this week's spread? Do you think it's gorgeous, as I do? I hope you do. If you do, let me know in the comments below. If you don't, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. But yeah, this week's spread. The decks. The decks are all available in a sense. The Harris-Crowley deck that you saw there, the one that is on the left of each pair, is available, but my version that I'm using right now has been trimmed by yours truly. So you can get the same version on Amazon, the large tarot, the large Thoth tarot, and trim it down just the same as I did. It's not that hard. And as it's trimmed down, I really find this deck easy to shuffle. The cardstock is great, it's durable, it's not expensive, and the trimmed down shape fits very nicely in my hands. I've got largish hands, but it fits very nicely, and I like working with it. The card to the right of the Harris-Crowley deck is available on Make Playing Cards, so the link for that will be in the comments below. And then the two I-Ching Oracle cards, they're from a deck that is, I believe, available, but I don't have a site for buying the cards. I will give you the link to the creator's Facebook page. You can reach out to the creator and perhaps order a deck from him, I think. So, friends, that's the stuff. Now, just in case you are a new person here, let me just give you a brief rundown of what you saw. Now, there were 5 groupings of pairs of tarot cards, right? The central grouping, the very, very middle, that gives us the ether element, the element of spirit. The upper left gave us the element of fire. Lower right gave us the element of water. Upper right gave us the element of air, and lower left gave us the element of earth. And then the 2 cards at the very, very ends, they were from the I-Ching Oracle, and they will give us advice or a summary of the spread sometimes as well. So, friends, that's the way that we're going to be reading these cards. We'll start off with the ether, and let me give you a close-up view of those 2 cards right now. Those were the 2 cards for the ether section. And just in case you don't know, probably you do, but just in case, the way I read the ether element is that there are no elements that are ill-dignified in ether. Now, all of the elements get along well and add to ether in the way I read. Now, if you have a different way of reading ether, then I would really love to hear from you in the comments below. I'd be really happy to learn. But the way that I understand it right now, ether has no ill dignities. So, we had 2 cards in ether. One of them was the 3 of Swords. The other was Fortune. And in the deck that I showed you, the card's name is Wheel of Fortune, but Thoth calls the Wheel of Fortune card just plain old Fortune. And that's the way we're going to be reading this deck, because both the Harris-Crowley and the Ashira Tarot are both Thoth decks. So I'll be reading them the same way. And so let me show you this 3 of Swords card, because that's where we're going to begin. Now, I think this is a gorgeous card. I think the artwork is beautiful. Now, no, it's not sunshine, rainbows, bright lights, and happiness, but in its darkness, in its feel of heaviness, there's a beauty here. The colors, the design are just gorgeous. And you see the 3 swords. They could be a little difficult to see. The large sword in the center, I'm sure you do see, but the 2 swords curving in from the upper corners, can you see those? They're all pointing towards the rose that's up towards the top of the card, right? And frankly, I like this card much better than I like the card in the Smith-Waite deck. There are a couple of cards in the Smith-Waite deck that I really have no particular love for, shall I say. I don't hate them. I just don't like the Three of Swords in the Smith-Waite card. We've got a heart with 3 swords stuck in it, somehow suspended in the middle of a rainstorm. And the Eight of Wands, these 3 sticks flying, eight sticks flying through the air. I look at it and I think, really? Is that all we could come up with? So those are 2 cards in the Smith-Waite deck that I don't particularly love the most. But in this deck, the Three of Swords, I think, is a beautiful card. And I don't know if you can see it, but this card is associated with Saturn in Libra. Now, last week, if you recall, we had Saturn bouncing around the entire spread, right? And generally, it was the buzzkill Saturn. It was the Saturn of crashing the party or making things unhappy, making things, the buzzkill. Except for the last appearance of Saturn in the Universe card, which would be the World card in both the Smith-Waite and Tarot de Marseille. But in the Thoth system, it's called the Universe card, and it's associated with Saturn. And that's a more beneficent Saturn, if you will. Yeah? So that Saturn was okay. Now, when this card came out as the first card in this week's spread, my first thought was, oh my God, is that where we're going this week again? But this week is not so bad. So, yes, we did start off with Saturn in Libra, a little bit of a carryover from last week. Now, what does that mean, Saturn in Libra? It means that this is Saturn is associated with Aquarius. Aquarius is the domicile, one of the domiciles of Saturn. So we have the Aquarius decanate of Libra, which is the second decanate. So we've got a complement. The complement would be Venus in Scorpio. Now, in this week's spread, Venus, Saturn actually have very little power, very little influence. That's what I want to say. Very little influence on this week's spread. Yeah? The stronger, more influential planets for this week are Jupiter, the Moon, the Sun, and Mercury. Yes. So, here, Saturn in Libra, Venus in Scorpio, they're not that strong. They don't give a strong influence on the entire spread, if that makes sense. But still, what is Saturn in Libra? What kind of a person has Saturn in Libra? Well, they're very practical people. They have strong balance and justice. They're refined and intellectual. They can be good diplomats. They're tactful. All wonderful things, but here the Three of Swords is not one of perfect balance and being very practical. Crowley calls this the card of Weltschmerz. Weltschmerz, world sorrow, universal sorrow, melancholy. That dissatisfaction with the state of the environment around us. Rather than in the Smith-Waite deck, the Three of Swords, we get the idea of heartbreak and it's a more personal card of things that happened to me that made me feel sad and that I learned from. Here, this is the more world-weary, the state of the world is dissatisfying and causes Weltschmerz. I love that word, even though my pronunciation, I'm sure, is not good. So we have an intense, lurking passion to create here. There's an intense passion to create. We had that passion to create last week, if you recall. Here we begin with that passion to create, but no good can come from it right now because of our discontent. Creating from the platform of discontent is not the most beneficial. So, because our platform, because our base is not the highest, creations that we begin now are not going to be very effectual, very well formed, very successful. So Crowley suggests here that we submit to whatever is arising right now, rather than trying to change it. Yeah? Submit to whatever is, no matter how dark it feels. Submit to what is. So if there are things that are happening or that you're experiencing, that we're experiencing right now, that are not as we had hoped, accept things as they are. Because again, this is not the moment to begin the new thing, that we have this fire burning within us. That's how we begin, but that's not where we end, right? So we begin with caution. Be careful. Accept what is. Don't rail against conditions. Don't rail against what we're seeing in the environment, in our experience right now. But rather, accept it for what it is, knowing that things are going to change, because apparently things are going to change. The next card we had here is the World card. I'm sorry, not the World card. The Wheel of Fortune card, or the Fortune card. Yeah? It's a wonderfully purple version of that card, isn't it? Let me take a peek again. This Wheel of Fortune, or the Fortune card, instead of having the four creatures around it, we've got two stars of David, and we've got two hands down at the bottom. We've got the phases of the moon. Very interesting card. And it's still associated with the planet Jupiter, which is great, because Jupiter opens up from Saturn. Now, when you think of mythology, who is Saturn? Saturn is the father of Jupiter, right? Or Kronos is the father of, Kronos is the father of Zeus. But here, Saturn is the father of Jupiter. Saturn eats his children because Saturn believes that his children are going to take over his kingdom. So he decides to eat them. But Zeus was spared, was pulled away and hidden, so that later Zeus could come in, kill his father, or cut his father open, and release his siblings from within and become the king of the gods, right? Zeus, Jupiter. We're talking about Jupiter here. Wrong country. We're talking about Jupiter. Still, Jupiter does the same thing. Goes in, cuts open Saturn, and releases his siblings from within and becomes the king of the gods. So here Jupiter is domiciled in both Sagittarius and Pisces. So there's an openness, an expansiveness that we begin to move into from this Weltschmerz card, right? So accept what is, and we can move into the fortune that is available to us. And here, being Jupiter, we have both mutable fire and mutable water's vital attributes entering our world. Now the cleaning up and let's get moving on kind of zodiacal symbols, right? And this card, Fortune, connects Chesed and Netzach, which are on the father pillar, the way I see the tree. Yeah, Chesed is loving kindness. Netzach is victory. So it connects our generosity and our loving kindness, our ability to radiate love around to those in our environment, those that we interact with our ability to overcome obstacles. Right here. And fortune is also associated with the Hebrew letter Kaf, which kind of looks like this. So it's the symbol for the shape of a palm. It's also the ability to tame and subdue things. Good thing to have after this card, our ability to tame and subdue those feelings of Weltschmerz, perhaps. Also, there's a need to bend ourselves in modesty and accept others as well. And remember, we did have that idea that we wanted to accept what is in the Three of Swords card, right? So we get that in Kaf as well. So we can subdue, we can tame that which is around us, but we do it with humility, and we do it by accepting those around us and accepting what is. We accept what is, we accept the people around us in humility, and we're able to tame those things. We're able to subdue those things which might still be on the more aggressive side. Now, associated with Kaf would be the rune Isaz, which looks like a letter I, the capital letter I without the top or bottom bars. It's like just a vertical line. Yeah, Isaz is ice, the rune for ice, but it's also rest. It's also willpower. Yeah, the willpower to be able to survive the ice of winter, the ice of stillness and confinement and restriction. So, Isaz can also be concentration. Now, that icy concentration that you might think of. It could also be physical or psychological barriers. But I think here the ideas of willpower, concentration are going to be the better direction to go with Kaf here being the shape of the hand being the thing we create with, being able to subdue that which might still be aggressive towards us while we are open to accepting others, and we are able to do so modestly with Kaf, right? So all of those things associated with Jupiter and fortune are wonderful, because there's a change of fortune most likely for the positive happening. So we move from this card to this card. Follow fortune and move toward the unchanging axle of the wheel. Are there suggestions here? Yeah? There's a change of fortune here, and it's most likely going to be good, so we want to follow it as we also want to move towards the unchanging axle, the center of the wheel, because the center of the wheel doesn't experience so much the ups and downs. We can sit in the center and watch the comings and goings of things from there as well, right? And we can find our own center here during its revolution. So as our fortunes, as we experience the improvement of things around, we have more space, like Jupiter gives space, have more space to find our own center and find our ability to center ourselves. So we don't want to extend ourselves. We don't want to push too hard. We want to wait for the wheel to do its work of turning here. So combined with this card of Weltschmerz, that's pretty good, yeah? We don't want to fight against this. We want to allow the wheel to turn with faith and trust that things are improving, as we also find our way to move back into our center. Find our way to ground ourselves in the center of the axle of the wheel. As we notice things and conditions are improving for us. So what a wonderful way to begin this week's spread, right? So we had these two cards as our information from Spirit. Now we're going to move right up into the fire section of the spread. Let me show you those two cards right now. This week's spread is pretty well inclusive, balanced. There are elements from the entirety of the tarot here. Yeah, we've got at least one wand, we've got at least one disc, we've got air cards here, we've got swords, we've also got cups. So we've got major arcana, we've got court cards. this spread is pretty nicely balanced. I mean, it leans a little bit in the direction of water, I believe, but still we've got a fairly good balance here, which is nice. And in the fire section, we had what? On the left, we had the 8 of discs, and on the right, we had the Knight of Swords. Now, discs, earth in fire, they're compatible. They don't build each other up, they don't enliven each other or intensify each other, but they're compatible, they're neutral towards each other. Swords in fire builds the fire up. So we've got a good pairing here, although there is a little bit of a rubbing and bumping up of between earth and air. So both of these cards in fire are wonderful. However, them together in fire are a little bit problematic. So what does that mean? Well, we're going to start off with the 8 of discs, which is prudence. Lovely card. Again, I don't know, maybe not my favorite of the deck, but it's a nice card. I love it. The colors are beautiful. The leaves protecting the flowers there are wonderfully symbolic. The colors, I think, are intense and beautiful. And you can see, I hope, that we have the sun in Virgo here. Now, the sun in Virgo. Now, the sun does not naturally belong for me in Virgo, but what happens when somebody has their sun in Virgo? They are just Virgo people, we usually think, right? So they're motivated by the urge to find practical solutions to things, right? To find practical outlets for their skills as well. They're interested in using their skills, their talents, and their abilities with doing real stuff in the world, right? And there's an emphasis on being useful with Virgos, being organized, being useful, getting stuff done, all Virgo traits. And in this card, what do we have? Crowley says there is a sort of strength in being there's a sort of strength in doing nothing at all with this card. That the prudence card, doing things carefully, or maybe even not doing, has a sense of strength to it as well. So this is time to take time, not to rush things. Don't hurry. Don't get to work when maybe it's not time to get to work yet. So this is time to take time. A new cycle is starting, so, and remember, that's what we just had in the ether section, right? We're moving from that Weltschmerz into a new cycle with the wheel turning, and there's another indication of that right here. A new cycle is starting. Keep at the work that we're doing. Don't stop doing the work, but don't rush either, right? Patience and prudence will be rewarded. Now, keep doing the work that we're doing, yes. There might be times when we will be called to retire from a situation as well. Not retire like stop working, but back off from the hot, fiery stove, right? Step away from the, what is it? Step away from the weapon, step away from the gun, yeah? Step away from whatever might be harmful. Keep an eye on it, though, because you'll know when it's time to harvest whatever it is. Now, it has that flavor of the 7 of Pentacles in the Smith-Waite a little bit as well, where we're keeping watch over what it is that is growing. We've got a little bit of that here. Step away from the things that are dangerous, but also step away from interfering too much with what is already growing, if that makes sense. Leave things the way they are instead of prodding them into grow, right? Keep doing the work, but don't mess with things, right? That's what this is telling us to do. And right next to it we had the Knight of Swords, which is a very interesting card. It's a little difficult to see for me because it's so light gray all the way across the board, right? But this Knight of Swords is Fire of Air. It would be the King of Swords for me in the Smith Waite. Yeah, Fire of Air. So in this deck we have Fire of Air, would be Gemini, which is the domicile of Mercury, from which mutable air's vital attributes enter our world. So we've got a Gemini Knight here. Now, Crowley associates the hexagram, this card, this Knight, with hexagram 32, which is Hang. Yeah? Thunder over wind. So we have endurance here. Continuing acting out of the law of one's own being. Now, we follow our, more than just our heart, we follow our own knowing and our own truth. That's the word I was looking for. We follow our own truth, which is a little different from following our heart, right? Following our heart, following our passions, that's following our fire. Following our truth is following our air, you might say. Yeah? What is your truth? Speak your truth. We want to follow our truth here. And continuance of applied force rather than violent energy. We want to keep on keeping on. Now, because this is an air card, the air part of this is in conflict with this card. However, this is Fire of Air. The fire aspect of this card is more harmonious with this card. So, while these two cards are not best buds, there's a buffer between them, with it being the Knight of Air rather than the Prince of Air, which would be Air of Air and be definitely conflictual with this one. So, what does that mean? The aspects of this card that I think that are harmonious with the Eight of Discs, those aspects are focused mental energy of long-term concentration to a task. Works well with the Eight of Discs, right? Rising slowly like sap in a tree and being able to persevere. Works perfectly with the Eight of Discs. Any sudden inspiration that we get here wants to be held in mind and carried forward to manifestation. Yeah, last week we had that sudden burst of inspiration that we didn't know what to do with. Here, this card is telling us to keep it alive, keep it going, keep the fire burning and growing. Don't look down, don't stop, don't waver, keep going to the end. So, those aspects of the Knight of Swords, I think, echo beautifully the Eight of Discs. So, because, again, this is the Knight of Swords, not the Prince of Swords, that fire element here with the air gives a lot of echoes to the Eight of Discs. Can you hear those echoes in here? So, in our fire, what are we called to do? We're called to, well, sit up a little bit more comfortably, we're called to have patience. Keep on working. Don't mess with things that are growing. Now, back off and pay attention to when things are ripe for harvest, but keep working. Keep the fire alive. Keep the sap rising through the tree. That sounded a little sexual, but you know what I mean. I hope. Yeah. Keep that fire growing and burning. Keep that the vital fluids flowing through us as slowly and steadily rather than quickly and burning out, right? And in this way, we'll be able to allow the wheel that we had in spirit to do the work of turning that it naturally will be doing. So, here we are ready to move into fire's equal and opposite mate, water. So let's move into the water side of the spread right now. Here are those two cards. In the water section of this spread, we've got a lot of water here, which is good. Water in water is wonderful, I think. And so we started with the Ace of Cups, and then we move into the Chariot. Now maybe you're saying, Chariot? Water? Really? Well, we'll get to it in a little bit, but the Chariot is associated with Cancer, which is one of the water signs in the zodiac, right? So we've got a lot of water here. And we got the moon, well, we'll get there. So let's start off with this beautiful ace. This card is just gorgeous. I think the design of this card, the colors of the card are beautiful. Look at how that cup radiates energy as it receives energy into it, right? And it's resting on a lotus, and it's full of power. So the Ace of Cups is the root of water, and it's fertility, it's productiveness, it's beauty, it's pleasure and happiness as well. It's time to pass on the love that we have. As we fill up, we want to share it as well with this card. There's a boundless possibility of creation here as well. Possibility. Not boundless created stuff, but boundless possibility of creation. Last week we had the Ace of the Ace of Wands. Now we have its opposite complement, the Ace of Cups, in a very different kind of creative stance. We make use of each pleasure while it is available to us. Yeah? Make use of each pleasure. What does that mean? But making use of a pleasure, well, that's when, okay, not making use of a pleasure is where we get the pleasure, we consume it, and we go, oh, that was good, now what? Right? Making use of a pleasure is where we enjoy the pleasure, we allow that energy, we receive that energy of pleasure, and we transmute it, we channel it into something that we want to do, to experience, right? We share that energy. We direct that energy. That's making use of the pleasure. And there's a potential of water being able to transform itself either into blood or to wine. I mean, this is Smith-Waite deck is a Christian deck. The Thoth Tarot is, believe it or not, a very Christian deck, right? Christian being in the sense of all of Christendom, including Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, all of the Christian traditions, all wrapped up into Christianity. These are Christian decks. So we have that idea of water into wine, water into blood. And those symbols of wine being intoxication and pleasure, blood being passion and also sacrifice, but life force, right? We also have the Holy Grail here. This is the Holy Grail. And so that's very interesting, being that it's paired up with the Chariot. Why is that interesting? Well, let's move on to the Chariot, and I'll tell you. The Chariot, yeah, this is a fabulous card. It's a very watery version of the Chariot, right? You see the seahorses pulling the Chariot? You see the figure sitting on the Chariot, I should say, on the Chariot, holding that disc. That disc is the Holy Grail. What is the Holy Grail? Well, according to Crowley, the Holy Grail is also sexual magic. For Crowley, everything is sexual magic. And okay, yeah, I mean, now, sexual magic, while it might begin with or include or have association with the actual coupling of genitals, it's more than that, right? It's using that life force, that creative life force, and directing it into something else. So, in that sense, yeah, the Holy Grail is sexual magic. And it's also a mystical experience. And yes, sexual magic can lead to mystical experiences, right? If you've heard of the Tantra Yoga, right? Just saying. Sacrifice. Surrender is also part of the Holy Grail. Sacrificing attachment to the illusion of self as well. Yeah? We get so attached to who we think we are that we lose the truth of who we are. So, to regain the truth of self, we need to lose our attachment to the illusion of the self, the personae that we have created in the world, the masks that we have lived through. Live through. I deliberately chose that preposition, that we live through. Rip them off. Sacrifice them on the altar of truth of self, if that makes sense. So, the chariot. The chariot is again associated with Cancer, which is the domicile of the moon. And the moon will come up at least once more here in this spread. And so we have cardinal water's vital attributes entering our spread here. Cardinal water. And we have mutable water up there with Jupiter in fortune. Here we've got cardinal water. And this card connects Bina and Gebra. Gebra, Bina is the top of the mother pillar, which is understanding. And Gebra is severity. But it's the severity of walls and boundaries and borders that separate this from that separate the good from the bad. It's the boundaries that give shape to what we want to manifest, for one thing. But there's a severity, like the severity of justice in the good way, where the truth is upheld. That kind of severity. We're not going to put up with bullshit kind of severity, right? So it connects our understanding with our sense of justice and boundaries and borders, which are all very useful. And Binah also gives us a sense of boundary as well, just in case you didn't know. The way that I read the Tree of Life, let's put this card aside for just a moment. The Tree of Life, we have Kether, Hokmah, Binah. The Ein Sof, the monad, that which is unsplittable and one, begins its self-division in Kether to become wisdom. But it's the wisdom of Ein Sof, the Kether is imperceptible to us in human form. We move into Kether, it's on the verge of perceptibility. The way I describe it, the way I think of it is it's that morning mist where you feel like it's there, but you can't actually see it. It's like, it's so diffuse, you sense it, but you can't point to it and say, yes, that is mist, that is fog. Have you ever experienced that? That moves into Binah, and in Binah, it's kind of like a womb. It's understanding, but it's like a womb. It receives the energy from Kether, and in its womb, it begins to give it shape. And in that womb, that energy begins to bounce off the walls a little bit and diversify, split up even more. So it's that kind, there's that beginnings of boundaries in Binah, and going down to Gevra, we have more solid, more clearer. We have clearer boundaries, if that makes sense. So this card connecting those two, I think, is significant. Yeah, we have more clarity, more boundary, more container for the diffuseness that came before. Which is great because for Cancer with the moon in Cancer, because there's also a potential for that water to not, if it's not in a container, to just spread out all over the place and have no form. But Cancer, of course, is the grabber, right? Grabbing onto stuff. So we have the Hebrew association of Heth, which is the shape of a fence or a gate. And I've heard associations of death as womb with Heth. Death as womb. Death as the womb for rebirth. The passageway into a new life. Yeah? Now, being Heth, it's also associated with a much brighter and happier rune called Wunjo, which looks like a flag up on a flagpole. And Wunjo is the rune of joy, group celebrations, attraction, and balance. So that and Heth balanced together make a very nice association for the Chariot card. Rebirth, celebrating that, passages, gates through, and attracting things through the gates and passing through the gate to be able to attract to us. We have, in the Chariot card, we've got triumph and victory. Now, Crowley associates a potential ruthlessness in action as well. But still, we are asked to follow rules here. Obedience is called for with this card. We want to stick to our willpower as well. Yeah, and that willpower has been running through this spread so far a little bit, right? With especially the Eight of Discs and the Knight of Swords, there's an element of willpower in both of those cards up in fire. So we want to stick to that willpower. We want to empty self of lust for the results. Does that make sense to you? Empty our lust for the results as we keep doing the work and we back off from trying to make things happen. Right? As we move towards the center of the wheel and trust that the wheel is turning for our benefit. We empty ourselves of our lust for the results and engage in the situation for what it is right now, for our own sake, for its own sake, I should say. For its own sake. We engage with what is for its own sake without needing it to become something that we're lusting for. So this card paired with this card, I think, is very interesting, right? Yeah, we've got that potential of creation, making use of the pleasure we feel and putting that energy into our sex magic of creation. And we stick to our willpower, which could be diffuse in all the water section, right? But so we stick to our willpower, we engage in the situation as it is for its own sake. We don't attach ourselves and rush after our results. We move like water, with the powerful flow of intention, because that's what intention is in the long, when all is said and done, right? It's a current, like a current of water rushing with great power in the direction we want to go. So we keep to that motion, not waiting for that lust for the result, but being where we are as we are and engaging with where we are, what we're doing, for the sake of it as it is. That makes sense, I think, doesn't it? So friends, that's where we are now, in our water. We're going to move up into our headspace right now. We're going to move into the air. Here are the two cards for the air. In the air portion of this spread, we have two cards. One is the Lovers, which is associated with Gemini, which is an air sign, and one is the Nine of Wands, which is fire. Fire and air build each other up. Air and air are wonderfully matched. So, beautiful cards to have in the air section. And we're going to begin with the lover card. The lover's card, I should say, right? Lover is Terre de Marseille. This is the lovers. Beautiful card. You see the two lovers there, which are the red king and which is we have the king and queen here doing getting ready for an alchemical wedding. We also have this card connecting both Binah and Tippereth. Yeah, Binah again is our wisdom. The top of the mother pillar connects to the heart, to beauty. So we have our understanding and beauty connected here. And we have the Hebrew letter Zayin, which is thought of as sustenance and nourishment. It can also be thought of as a weapon or a sword, which is interesting. Cutting up time a little bit. Kind of an airy thing to do, yeah, cutting up time. Because we have Zayin, we also have the rune Kanaz, which is enlightenment. And the enlightenment of visions and revelation and inspiration and wisdom. Wonderful connecting wisdom to the heart of beauty, right? We also have passions in Kanaz. And creativity and love are part of Kanaz as well. So, wonderful rune to have associated with the Lovers card. And for Crowley, the Lovers is, very interestingly, analysis and synthesis. It's the breaking things apart in order to bring them back together. We analyze things, we see what their components are, and then we synthesize those components into something perhaps new. Yeah? Things that are broken apart and divided and considered before they can be brought together. Whether they be business, relationships, or the self. We break ourselves apart and see what's in there before we bring ourselves back together into a new unity. So there's an understanding that can only come from the synthesis of two identical things, even though they appear to be different. Yeah? For example, me here and everything else there appears to be different, but bringing those things together in our understanding, we form the truth of what is, that it's all one. That's part of this card as well. And that understanding brings great knowledge, wisdom, unity, power. And so that's something for a Gemini to accomplish, right? Bring aspects of mind together to realize the fullness of truth. Which is not something that Mercury can do very easily as immature form of Mercury that is here in this part of the zodiacal wheel. So it's not an easy task, but that's the challenge for Mercury in Gemini, is to bring those aspects of mind together to find the truth of the union. So that's where we start off from. And the card that we flow into, you might say, is the Nine of Wands, which is called Strength in this deck. And it's associated with the moon. See the moon in the Chariot, right? The moon is domiciled in Cancer. Here the moon is in Sagittarius. Not a natural placement, but when the moon is in Sagittarius, people of this type have a passion for learning. They seek the truth about people and the world around them. Fabulous match for this card, right? So it may be, according to this card, it may be time for rapid progress, requiring steady strength. Perhaps keeping the beginning of this spread in mind, we might want to modify this to be, instead of rapid progress, steady progress, with steadiness in mind, with the strength of steadiness in mind. Everything is pointing toward something that we want, and it asks us for, what do I want to say? It asks us to guide the chariot that we're riding gently, rather than trying to tug things. No, go this way, go that way, go this. It asks for us to guide our direction gently on its way. And it's interesting that I just made that association with the chariot now. So everything is pointing towards what we want, but we want to guide it gently. And perseverance and moving onwards towards our goal is asked for. Now, Crowley associates this card with an Aikido master, yeah, who is able to juggle many things, is able to keep many things moving in the air and keep them on course by just slow observing and slowly, or not slowly, but with very little apparent effort, with just a little took, a little think, redirecting things into the course that we want, he, she, them, they want them to go in. Think Matrix, where things seem to be suspended and yet moving at the same time at a certain speed that they can be, with very little speed and very little effort, redirected in the direction that we want them to go in. That's what this card seems to be like for me, as I imagine it, reading what Crowley has to say about it. Little actions. Pats on the back before a race, a smile to a stranger in the hall. All of these things have an effect. And they all add up to make us who we are and make the direction that we are going viable or not. Its card asks us to get our ducks in the row. And it's a very interesting shape on the Nine of Swords, right? We've got three equilateral triangles here with this interesting centaur with an arrow poised to be launched, to be loosed down there at the bottom. And I guess it's that, okay, so we've applied the effort of pulling the bow back, but this is not the time for more effort. This is the time for gently guiding the direction of the bow and then releasing it, right? That's another way to perhaps imagine this Nine of Wands. So this associated with the Lover card, we take a look where we are, what we're doing, where the direction things are going in, and we want to bring them together, but we don't bring them together. We gently guide them in the direction of reuniting, of reforming. Right? Forming again, reforming. With these two cards together. Reforming with perseverance, however you want to say that. I'm moving towards the goal of uniting and creating that we got with the Ace of Cups a little bit, right? Sorry. My room is, how they say in English, cold, very cold. So because it's so cold, let's move on into the Earth section of the spread. Here are those two cards. Down here in the Earth, we had two cards, the Moon and the Six of Cups. Both ostensibly associated with water, especially in these decks. So, the Moon, as you can see, this is, I think, a beautiful card as well. We have the two Egyptian gods there standing. Well, we have one Egyptian god split into two. That's the same god staring at himself. They're two versions of the same god. They're protecting the path forward. We have at the bottom the beetle moving the sun through the waters of the underworld, getting ready to move it back into a new sunrise. But here we are in the Moon, and we also see the fire of life in the sky behind. We also see what looks like a blue kind of earth with DNA strands up above that at the very top. Very interesting card. And the Moon is associated with Pisces, which is the domicile of Jupiter. Jupiter again. We've got another Jupiter here. We had Jupiter in in the Fortune card. And here we have Jupiter returning in Pisces. Was there other Jupiter? Those are the two areas for Jupiter main. Yes, in this spread. But two important placements for Jupiter, both in major arcana cards, in Fortune and in the Moon. And so here we have mutable water's vital attributes entering our world once again. We had cardinal water with the Chariot, and we had we had mutable water with the Fortune card. We have mutable water again here. So what is this? This card connects Netzach and Malkut, which means it connects our Sephira of victory over obstacles with manifestation, which should be good. And according to this system, we have the card associated with Kof, which kind of looks like a letter P, and is supposed to represent the monkey mind, the back of the amygdala part of the brain. Now the part of the brain that tries to mimic being human, according to what I've read. It's also associated with the sun, which is interesting being here in the Moon card, but also very interesting because the next card over, which is this card, has the sun in Scorpio. So it's interesting that Kof here also refers to the sun. The rune associated with this is Manaz, which is, Ehaz, which is a horse, which is a symbol of riding, of progress, of loyalty and harmony, as well as cooperation. However, all of those good things are very little help with the way that Crowley sees the Moon card. Crowley sees the Moon card in a very, very negative way. It's the refusal to see the truth. Practicing deception, deliberately practicing deception is also possible here. Or self-deception. Have you ever deceived yourself? I know I have. Here on the Earth, we're manifesting with the beginning of something that is might be an illusory or might be deceptive, self-deceptive, or deception of others. He also describes this card as trying to rearrange the deck chairs on a sinking ship, thinking that fixing where the chairs are is going to solve the problem, instead of just getting the F off of this ship that is, and into a lifeboat of a ship that is sinking. That kind of self-deception. So, we must know and name our fears here, our illusions, our deception, to pass through this time. So we do have a little bit of we do have a way through this. And Crowley does admit that this card is pointing us to the sense that we're on the brink of an important change. So maybe this card is associated with the Three of Swords card, even though the planets are not associated. Maybe this moon in this spot is giving us the manifestation of that Weltschmerz here as an illusion, a self-deception, or experiencing deception in the world around us. And that we are called here now to name those things that scare us, that make us feel Weltschmerz, that are self-deceptive or are deceptive in general. We want to name them, because if we can name them, we can avoid them and pass through this stage of our progress, this stage of our journey. And the stage of our journey leads us to the Six of Cups, which has, again, cold hands, not small cards, but thin cards. Let me go get that card. It just ran across the room. Just a second. I'm back with the Six of Cups. Here it is. The Six of Cups is indication of pleasure. The title is Pleasure in the Harris-Crowley deck. And it has the sun in Scorpio. Now, those of us who have, not me. My grandmother had her sun in Scorpio. The sun in Scorpio, they are perceptive, they are magnetic, they are secretive. They also have an interesting obsession with death and with the transformation that comes through death. Also with sexuality. I don't know that about my grandmother, but I know other things about her perceptiveness, her magnetism, her other-sightedness. So, according to Crowley, this is the beginning of a wish. So, we move from this deception, which is the brink of an important change, into perhaps the beginning of a wish. Ease, harmony, steady increase. That wheel from the fortune card, the wheel is changing, it's rotating, it's moving in our favor. Emotional renewal is possible here, regeneration. The summer sun on the ocean for a holiday is how he describes it. Yeah, basking in the summer sun at the ocean on holiday. Pleasure can be increased by sharing it as well. So remember we had the power of pleasure directed into practical. What did I say? With the Ace of Cups, was it? Where was that? It's pleasure directed into creation, right? Pleasure, that feeling of pleasure directed into something that is productive. We got that here again, here. Gosh, where was that? I remember saying that. Anyways, emotional, yes, pleasure directed. So, yes. Wow, things are just flying all over the room. Okay, so this card is telling us that, yes, there are things that are messed up. Reminding us of that Three of Swords card at the very beginning in the ether. There are things that are messed up that might be self-deception. There might be deception in our environment. But we're on the brink of a change. We want to name those things that are messed up. And if we do that, we can move into this card of pleasure, of ease, of harmony, and perhaps fulfilling that promise of the Ace of Cups, which we had in the water section. The wheel is turning if we can allow it to turn and not try to get in there and turn it ourselves. Rather, we want to move into our center and observe and be patient and keep doing. That doesn't mean that we stop acting in the world, but we act in the world from our center, and we know when to step back and allow things to happen. We don't lust after the result. We keep our sense of what is going, we keep our sense of the present moment as it is, engaging with that, trusting, knowing that we are moving in the direction of what we want, which is living an intentional life, right? So friends, we're about to get 2 cards from the I-Ching for advice. I believe it's advice. Let's take a look at those 2 cards right now. The 2 cards we had for advice from the I-Ching were, from left to right, hexagram 8, which is union, and hexagram 21, which is biting. Now that card worried me a little bit, frankly, when it came out first, but it's not so bad. It's actually fairly beneficial. But we're going to start off with union. Now we start off with the union card. It's this beautiful card. We've seen it before. It's this beautiful card. It's water over earth. Yeah. The card that was right next to it is going to be fire over thunder. But this is beautiful. I love the art. I like the artwork in this entire deck. And you'll notice that the 2 cards are somewhat, they match each other beautifully. Now some cards are vibrantly reddish yellow. Some cards are very dark gray blue. But these 2 cards with have a very similar background and have a very similar color palette to me. So again, yes, this has more red, this has more blue, but these 2 cards have a more harmonious flow visually to me. And we start off again, water over earth. And this is the card for mutual assistance, mutual and collaborative support, mutual aid, helping each other out, right? Getting help from others, but also being out there to help others as well. Harmony and cooperation are indicated here. Seeking help and collaboration makes achieving our goals easier. We want to team up, right? We want to consult others as well, rather than doing everything alone. Now some of that help could be informational. Now, it could be getting advice from people. And when facing challenges, working together can make success and prosperity more achievable. So, we've got this sense from the entire spread of things turning. We're on the cusp of a new beginning, of a new beneficial turn of the wheel, but we don't want to do it alone. We have the chance here to get some help, to get some advice, to get some folks on board with us for a mutual benefit. And this connects right up with, again, this card called biting, which is fire over thunder. But that means biting through and adjusting change. Now, the change is coming and we bite through it. It's the absorption, digestion of change. Might be a little bit weird for you to understand, but there's an ongoing change and adjustment are required here, are asked for here. So when things are out of balance, change is called for to achieve harmony. We want to be proactive. We want to be decisive and decisively approach those things that need to be challenged. To be challenged, not like en garde challenge, but when we live up to our challenges, right? We want to resolve problems to achieve balance and harmony. We want to be decisive, we want to be clear, we want to have and open attitude as well. Which is good because we begin with getting help from others, right? Getting ideas, getting advice, getting help from others, and facing challenges together. Here, those challenges are in order to change. And we want to be proactive, again. We want to, the creators of this deck keep saying, bite through and adjust change. What does biting through change mean to you? To me, it sounds like we're trying to stop the change from happening, but that's not what it is. We want to move through the change. We want to actively move through the change. Maybe bite onto something that's going to move us through the change. I don't know. I don't quite get where that means, where biting through change is leading us, frankly. That's what the author is saying. But I get the rest of it, that change is called for. We change in the direction towards harmony, not disharmony. We change in the direction towards balance, not imbalance. We do it proactively, decisively, not kind of like, well, maybe this, maybe that, maybe that. Decisively, but not the decisiveness of, yeah! But rather, remember, we wanted to have that decisiveness of the Aikido master who is dum, 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 yeah? Moving things in the direction to unity, towards balance, towards creativity, towards clarity. We do it together by joining forces, by joining knowledge bases, and we move towards mutual aid and benefit. Towards change. Change for the better, change for balance, change for harmony. Towards creativity, one we assume from this spread, right? So what is the advice? The advice here is to get help. To welcome help, to allow people to move into and work with you as well. Does that make sense? If it does, let me know in the comments below. If it does not, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. If what I said sparked something different in your head. Or if you know what the author means by biting through change. So, let's talk. I would love to interact with you. I love interacting with you. And I appreciate your presence. I appreciate your being here. I'd like to give you another great thank you. And always a reminder that you don't have to watch these videos in one swell swoop. You don't have to watch these videos from soup to nuts, from start to finish in one sitting. You can split it up. Watch for a little bit, come back. Watch for a little bit and come back. That's allowed. It's all allowed. And again, if you want a reading from me, my email address is below, thehangedmaninthemoon@gmail.com. Shoot me an email, we'll get you a reading. Okay, friends, thank you very much. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And it looks like things are going to move in a direction that will be very creative and very positive for us in the coming week. And so, now as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.